So we're going to look at Learning Outcome 2. Yesterday we looked at the Learning Outcome 1 where we looked at recruitment and how it takes place in organizations. Today we're doing Learning Outcome 2. So it's understand the principles and practice of people management. Like I was just saying, there's actually 5 assessment criteria in here. So it's a bit of a big one. 2.1 is explain the role of people management in an organization. 2.2, describe the key roles and responsibilities of the human resource function in a business organization. 2.3, outline key pieces of legislation that affect people management in an organization. 2.4, review best practice in conducting staff appraisals. And finally, 2.5, explain the importance of disciplinary and grievance procedures. If you look on Moodle now, you'll see that you've got the first 3 learning outcome PowerPoints on here. So you should be able to access what we're learning as well in your own time. So you'll be able to look at everything that I'm teaching you.
Okay.
So we'll make a start. So we've already talked about the aim is to look at the HR processes and job performance and reward recognition within this. So we're just going to be focusing on people management for this section. So this is 2.1. When we talk about people management, we actually think, what is people management? Now, this is something that is actually conducted by the manager. So the managers will actually work towards, they'll address any issues, they'll look at where somebody might need training, they might want to develop somebody's skills, they might even want to just motivate someone so that they're, working a little bit better or working towards their best. So when we say people management, that's what we mean. It's also defined as a set of practices and it encompasses the end-to-end processes of talent acquisition. So it's talent optimization and talent retention. So you're gaining, like we talked about skilled workers yesterday. So you're gaining new people within your work or organization. You're doing things that, will develop them. So training, development, appraisal processes. And then you're taking steps to make sure that they stay with you. So while you're doing all this as a manager, you're actually making sure that you're providing continued support for your business, but you're also being a guide for your employees. So you're the person that they'll actually look onto and come to if they've got any problems or if they just want something to talk to you about. So when we think about people management, there's actually 5 steps you can go through. Obviously, it can differ with company to company, but these are the basic steps. You're going to create, you're going to comprehend, you're going to communicate, you're going to collaborate, and you're going to confront. So we'll go over what we mean by these. So you're going to create a workforce. So you're creating this workforce so you can get a better future, you've got a better team, it's more effective, and that each and every member within it actually knows what the purpose is, and they can tell you what they're working towards. So you're creating an optimal team. When we talk about comprehend, it's so that you have an understanding of what the goals are for the organization, so that you need to know exactly what you're aiming towards, what your organization wants, what their targets are, and how you're going to work towards them. When you're comprehending, you also need to look at, say, if you're in a managerial position, you're going to look at the team members that are under your guidance. You're going to look at their personalities, what motivates them, what their career goals might be, or what sort of personal goals they might have. So you're going to want to understand these things. And it will help you manage your team a lot better if you can. Communicate is when you communicate openly. You're talking to each other, you're making sure that everybody understands what tasks you've delegated to them. But you're also going to make sure that you're not only giving feedback if something is good or if something is bad, but you're receiving feedback because your team might have something to say to you and say, you speak too fast to us, or sometimes we don't understand what's going on, or you're too rushed. So it's nice to be able to have a good communication system within yourselves. You're also going to collaborate, so you're going to work smarter, you're going to work as a team. What we say is, like it is on here, success is a team function, but so is failure. So if you're succeeding as a team. But if you're failing, you're also failing as a team. So regardless of what you do within the team, you need to make sure that you're delegating the tasks to the right person. So if somebody is good in accounting, you need to make sure that you're giving them the accountancy jobs. So they're summing up, they're in charge of any budget. If you're giving that job to somebody who's good at marketing, you're setting them up to fail in the first place because they're having to start from scratch. Whereas somebody with the right experience will know exactly what's going on. So make sure that you're giving the job to the right person. And then we talk about confrontation. Now, this isn't just about confrontation where people are fighting or arguing. It can be about looking at any differences that people have, but in a good way. So we all know that everybody is different. I'm different, you're different. We'll meet loads of different people in our lives who've got different personalities, cultures, beliefs. There's so many different things that everybody has. So it's nice to highlight those differences, but also respect them as well. So by doing this, you're setting a tone of respect, you're creating loyalty, you've got commitment with your organization, and you're actually optimizing these differences so that you're not having any bad conflict. So what you do is try and just tackle things positively. So understand it, acknowledge it, and then tackle it in a positive way. So overall, the role of people management is to manage the overall performance of the employees, is to motivate your staff, is to give praise. So do praise someone. If they're doing fantastic, give them praise. So when I'm marking my assignment, doing assessments of the students' assignments, when I'm not just going to highlight this is a section you've not done right, I will say you were fantastic in this. I love the use of your examples in here. I really like the fact that you put images within your assignment or you backed it up with supporting information. So it's always nice to give somebody praise where it's due, but also give them guidance where it's needed as well. We talked about the retention of staff. So within people management, you need to make sure that you're retaining staff. So things like giving them bonuses, awards, rewards, company benefits like a car, a laptop, or a phone, or even just having travel expenses where if they're traveling daily to meetings and things, then they know that they're getting their petrol and their lunch paid for. You need to train and develop your employees, so keep them updated on any new technologies or any new processes that are here. And then also, for good people management, you need to know what you're actually working towards. There's no point in you being a fantastic manager and supporting your team when you're not meeting your targets or you've no idea what you're meant to be doing. So you need to know what your organizational goals are and actually work towards achieving those. So that was it for 2.1. Do you have any questions or any comments you'd like to add in?
No, thank you.
Right, let's go on to 2.2. So we're just going to look at the human resources function in a business organization. Now, as you can see from this image here, there's a lot of different functions that the HR department has. And to be honest, there's most of these I will be talking about in a moment, but we've got selection, recruitment, legislations, discipline, development, reward systems, training, trade unions, productivity and motivation. So it's not as traditionally what I used to think human resources were. They'd hire you, they'd make sure you got paid on time, and that was it. But obviously, as my career has gone forward and as I've been doing things, I've realized that human resources is infinitely larger than what I thought in my younger days. So they do have a lot of responsibilities. Within this, what you'll notice in the indicative content, you'll need to, when you do your assignment, you're going to need to talk about guest and story. So we're going to go over their models as well, just very briefly on here. So we've got a philosopher called Story from 1989, and he actually believed that the human resources management models is that it is the human resource that gives competitive edge, and that the aim of HRM should be to enhance your employee commitment, and that HR decisions are of strategic importance, so that the HR policies need to be integrated into the business strategy. So overall, what Story believes is that you need to make sure that you've got a employee base that you're working towards, them being committed to your company, and that anything that you're doing for your company, you're actually working towards the strategic goals or the organization goals, and any policies, any sort of implementation that you're doing needs to be worked within your own organizational modes. And then we've got the guest model of HRM, and this just shows what how HRM works. So you've got the HRM strategy, then you've got the practices, then you work towards your outcomes, and behavioral outcomes, performance outcomes, and financial outcomes. So these are the strands of within this model. We're also going to look at the difference between IR and HRM. So IR is industrial relations. So industrial relations and human resource management are two separate departments, but they do actually relate to each other. They hold different roles in the organization, and they are got different concepts, but there is a slight interrelation within them. So industrial relations can sometimes be known as employment relations, and it looks at different employment situations that include the employees, employers, it looks at trade unions, and it looks at the government. So initially, the IR will actually look at employment relations, and it will look at what type of compensation is to be offered. So in other words, what sort of monetary value you are, how much your wage should be, or how much your salary should be. And then it will look at, you know, what your compensation is in exchange for what your work contract is. So it'll set a certain amount of salary and say, you're going to do this many hours a week or this many hours a month, and this is what we're going to pay you. The IR is also affected by the decisions of the managers and the employers. So the managers and the employers will actually have a say in how IR is run. Human resource management, so HRM, it's just about managing human resources. So it's managing every single person that is within the organization. They focus on achieving the organizational goals. They focus on the objectives, and they just look at, you know, hiring the best talents. So their main aim is they know what the goal is for the organization. They know that, for example, we want to sell X amount of product, and we like to make this much profit out of it. So they know what their targets are, and they're going to work at hiring the right people and, you know, actually developing the people within the organization to actually work towards it. So overall, the effective management, HRM management resources can actually directly contribute to your organization's goals and towards the effectiveness. So if they're doing their job rightly, they're motivating the people that are working within the organization. They're working towards getting the goal that they want. When we look at human resources, we also have something called soft and hard variants. Now, soft variants they're just things that are used to describe the type of approaches that you aim at enhancing the commitment, the quality, and the flexibility of your employees. So that's the soft touches that they do. The hard variants are things like where you're looking at strategy, you're looking at your business goals, you're looking at what sort of resources you can get into and how this can be done. You might look at, you know, minimizing your costs. So you might want to have low wages, but then again, you also want minimal training. You might want to, have a very close supervision where everybody is getting watched constantly. But then you might also have lean production. So you might be downsizing. You might be cutting off, closing down departments, or, going to another part of the country where it's cheaper to run production. So that is what we do with hard variance. So for recruitment, you look at advertising, your job description, and your person spec. So recruitment is just how a vacancy is advertised. Will follow the regulations for employment law. There's main forms of recruitment, so you do it through advertising in papers, magazines. To be honest, everything is done on the internet now. So LinkedIn, you've got so many other online job places where things are advertised. So a lot of it is vacancies are done either hard copies, so like newspapers, magazines, trade papers, and so on, but mainly online as well now. They'll do the job descriptions, they'll do the person spec, and then they'll just look at the applications to see if this person is suitable for us or not. Then you have selection. This covers shortlisting, interviews, presentations, in-tray exercises, psychometric testing, and aptitude testing. So these are some of the things we actually did yesterday. So this is the process of where they're getting the candidates, they're recruiting them, and they're getting someone to come in. They're shortlisting the most suitable candidates, and they're bringing them in. They interview them. So they do all those common methods like we talked about yesterday, face-to-face, or at the moment it's over some type of like Zoom or Teams. They do the testing, so psychometric or aptitude. They do in-tray exercises. So this is activity based around what your customer will actually be doing. Where if you're going to be going into a business where you're handling calls, like in the customer services department, you might be asked to, do a live phone call with somebody on the other end, where it's probably another member of staff. What they do is they act as a disgruntled customer. So they're going to listen to your responses and see how you actually respond to them. Then again, they might have presentations, so really a whole load of ideas that you can go through. Then we've got the legislations. So this is a very important aspect of human resources. There's a wide range of areas that you're going to be looking at, which we will look at in a moment. This can actually add to the cost of business because if you're following certain legislations, it can be costly because you have to do things to a certain specification, to a certain standard. You're liable to do certain things in a certain way just to make sure that, everybody is safeguarded. So even in things like in a small office, anything like a hairdresser, if they've got, or in a school, if you've got access to equipment or cleaning products and you know that there's people that could get hold of it and maybe hurt themselves, they have to be stored away, locked away in a cupboard and, out of the way. It's just you're making sure that any person coming into your place of employment, employees or stakeholders or customers, they're all protected. Then you've got discrimination. So this is another aspect. This is a crucial aspect, actually. So you've got race, gender, and then you've got disability. So disability, maybe a few years ago, 10 years or so ago back, there would be a time where if you were in a wheelchair, you might not be hired. If you had any type of hearing impairment, you might get looked over. But now disability shouldn't be an issue for employers anymore. It's something that they're not allowed to ignore. So you need to make sure that HRM will actually take reasonable steps to accommodate and recruit disabled workers. Then we've got discipline. So we're going to look at things like grievance procedures, dismissal, external agencies like ACAS and tribunals. So firms, they can't just say you're sacked and you go, like I've sacked you, you've got to leave. They've actually got to have a lot of processes and a lot of procedures put in place to sort out any workplace conflict. So if you make a mistake and you're like, oh no, they can't just say, right, that's it, leave. There has to be a process that they follow. So there's informal meetings, formal meetings, verbal warnings, written warnings. You'll follow the grievance procedures, and then if nothing works, you're going to be working with external agencies. So you might be part of a union, or you might get hold of some legal representation. And then we look at development. So this is part of training as well. So this is where you're looking at opportunities, promotion, personal development, and CPD. So this, by taking part in this for human resources, you're actually motivating your staff. You're probably helping them to be a lot more loyal to you. So because if you're there, you're motivating them, you're actually helping them to develop themselves. They're going to want to stay with you. And the plus point for the organization is that you're helping the employee to fill their potential. So they're going to be working at their optimal best, which is a plus for the organization. Training. So again, similar to development, like I was just saying, it helps to gain new skills. So you've got a new program or software that you've started using at work. You're going to get the training on it. You're not just going to say, oh, you're going to be using this new system today, get on with it. You will get training for that. It helps to keep up to date, and so it helps you to stay competitive as well. It helps your efficiency, and it can be done in-house or externally. So you might have somebody coming in to train you, or you might have a manager that's gone for a certain training, they've understood it, now they know what to do, and they're doing the training with the other members of staff. So, or you might go out and go to a conference or something, or a training center, and they'll work it out for you. And then we have reward systems. So these are things like pay and benefits. Money is not the only way that you might get rewards. So when we think about rewards, we think, oh, we're going to get a Christmas bonus, or, you know, if we do certain things, we'll get a commission. You can actually have fringe benefits as well. So you'll probably hear this quite a lot through our this unit. So fringe benefits are things like your health insurance might be paid for you. You might get access to a gym. You might get educational assistance where, you know, you've got your qualification to a certain degree, but your workplace might decide, oh, we love the way you work, we want you to progress, and they might pay for your university course or might pay for some training for you. You might get flexibility. So if you've met your targets, you've done everything, you can probably leave early that day, or you have a set amount of time. So it doesn't matter what time you come in. You could come in really early, start at 7:30 and leave at 3:30. Or you could start at 9:30 and then finish at 5:30 again. So you've got flexibility in that way. And then you might even be able to accrue extra holidays. Trade unions. So these are there to actually build relationships with the employees' representatives. So if you're working within a place and you're worried about certain things, you might want to join a union. Now, those union representatives will be familiar with your work organization, and they will help you if there's any issues with grievance or there's something that you want to get addressed. They will be there to help you. They'll be there, they're there to consult you, they're there to negotiate with you, and they'll work with each other. The trade unions can actually help sort out any issues as well, because sometimes what will happen is you'll get a lot of people will go to those representatives, and they might all have the same issue. They might all say that we don't have a comfortable place to sit in, our you know, we're not able to get our breaks on time. So they'll notice, oh, there's this particular thing that's not being met. Then they might go to the management and say, this is what we're noticing, you need to address this. So they will help to change that. And then productivity. So this is your output, and this is how you measure your performance. So you've got to look at how you value the contribution that your workers actually put in. It can be really awkward and difficult to measure every type of output. So especially if you're in the service industry, if you're saying that you're working in a restaurant and you need to be serving 10 to 15 customers per 20 minutes, you can't really control that because maybe there's not that amount of people that are coming into the restaurant at that moment. Or if you're working in a shop, maybe there's not that many customers coming in. So one person might end up having 3 customers in a row, another person might have 0. So you can't really do the output of that. You can actually do appraisals for productivity as well. Now these appraisals should be non-judgmental. So you shouldn't be sitting there to judge someone and say, right, you've done really bad or you've done fantastic or something. It's nice to praise people, but it's not nice to judge them because you never know what sort of situation might have led to something. And then you can look at the strengths and weaknesses and any sort of things you can help to develop your employee. So that was 2.2. Now we're just going to have a look at legislation. So outline key pieces of legislation that affect people management in organisations. Now we're going to look at a number of legislations on the following slides, but I've just highlighted a few of them here. We've got Equal Pay Act, so the Sex Discrimination Act, the Race Relation Act, Disability Discrimination, and Employment Equality. So the Equality Act, it just covers things like age, disability, whether you're pregnant or doing paternal leave, your race, religion, sexual orientation. So this means that you can't be discriminated against any of these following characteristics. When we think about discrimination, we've actually got direct discrimination and indirect discrimination. So direct discrimination is when you're purposefully, looking at someone, you're looking at their skin color, looking at their gender, looking at, how old they are, or even from what their name is, and you're purposely discriminating against them, and you're saying that I don't want this person working for me. So you're treating one person less favorably. Indirect discrimination is when you're discriminating without realizing it. So, for example, Saturdays for Jewish people is a religious day for them. It's a day of relaxing. If you work in your office or you implement within your organization that everybody has to work 2 Saturdays a week, 2 Saturdays a month, then you're indirectly discriminating against that group. You might also be discriminating against people saying that no head coverings around. So you might not be able to wear a turban or a headscarf. If you say there's no jewelry allowed, what if you have a piece of religious jewelry, then you're indirectly discriminating against that again. You can also have discrimination on the grounds of disability. So when you're treating somebody less favorably, you're not making any changes for that person either. You can actually enforce anti-discrimination legislation. So court action can be taken for equal opportunities. So things like sex discrimination, racial discrimination, and individuals, so people that work, so employees, they can actually take allegations to the employment tribunal if they feel there's something that is not being addressed. Got trade unions again. So they're there to help your workers, to make sure that they're getting their legal rights and they're getting looked after in the way they should be getting looked after. They help to provide a framework. So they're there to be like a collective bargainer, for a better workplace or better business standards. And if those things don't happen, they're there to protect the workers. So they can do strike action or, support and defend their members in a reasonable way. Then we've got Employment Rights Act of 96. So this just actually consolidates all of the employment rights. So it covers unfair dismissal, redundancy, 0-hour contracts, suspension from work, flexible working, and protection of wages. Then we've got ACAS. So ACAS actually stands for Advisory, Conciliation and Arbitration Service. This was founded in 1896, but it's got its name and structure since 1974. So what they do is they prevent and resolve problems in the workplace. They try to be a conciliatory medium. So they'll work with the employee, and they'll work with the organization, or they try and sort something out. So they mediate and they arbitrate. They've got very helpful guidelines, and they've got a fantastic website that you can actually go on to and just have a little read through. And then the last section for 2.3 is we just looked at like individual employment rights, unfair dismissal. So you've got your industrial relations, your contracts of employment. You've got the rights to not be discriminated against. You've got the right to join a union if you so wish to. You've got limitations on hours. So you've got European Union hours, UK working hours, statutory sick pay, and so on. So, Ritesh, are you okay with 2.3 so far?
Yes.
Fantastic. It's very worded, this one.
Okay.
Right. Now we're going to look at reviewing the best practice in conducting staff appraisals.
Okay.
So when we think about staff appraisals, we actually think, why do we have staff appraisals? Now there's a lot of reasons for these. I've put down the main reasons over here. So it's to get information. It's to let your employees know how their performance compares with the job standards. So you might have certain tasks within your job you need to do, but is your performance meeting those? Appraisals are there as a written record. They're also there to identify and to develop any talents and abilities. So somebody might be naturally good at something, and you might just want to enhance on that. And it also identifies any employees that actually need their performance to be improved. So you look at it, you think that your performance is not meeting what it should be. If they don't carry on with that, if they don't improve, then you could have disciplinary action. So appraisals are a good way. They can be fantastic for you to keep a record of exactly how your employee is actually doing, just to provide guidance and feedback for them, and just to see so they actually know what they can be doing. Appraisals actually help you, especially for finding about what sort of training and developing opportunities you might want to put your staff into as well. So these are the following points we'll be looking at. So what is a good way to carry out staff appraisals? How do we prepare for them, and how often should this be conducted? So when we look at staff appraisals, it's really this is the best way to describe it. It's like a full circular motion. It's something that's always ongoing, regardless of how often you look at it. So you would start off with creating team performance indicators, so PI. Once you've created those performance indicators, you'd actually use those against your performance. You'll monitor your performance against your targets, then you'll review your team performance, and then you'll provide support and development. And then once you've reviewed it, you're providing development. This might lead to you changing the performance indicators or the objectives or the targets that you're actually working towards. So you might do this every couple of weeks, you might do this every 6 months or every 3 months. It really is just an ongoing process. When we talk about organizations, every single organization has a target that they want to achieve. So you work in, for example, in McDonald's. McDonald's wants to be able to sell a particular amount of burgers and a particular amount of fries and drinks. They want to be able to push their extras that they can get a lot of money out of, like ice cream and Happy Meals. So they've got certain target that they know they want to meet. So as a manager, as a team leader, you will know what your targets are. When you know these targets, you're actually able to establish your team targets. So obviously, you're not going to say one particular team has to do every single thing that the organization wants. There'll be many teams within the organization. So you're going to choose, you're going to say, right, this is our particular target. Let's align it with the organization targets. Let's see if we can meet it. So you're setting out objectives for what you want to achieve, and then you're working towards it. So when you're doing that, on this diagram here, you're identifying targets or objectives right in the center. Then you're looking at strategies for raising your performance within that. So saying, how can I meet these targets? How can we go towards making sure that we achieve this? And then once you're working on that, you'll review it and you'll think, oh, okay, we didn't meet our targets this month. What is the reason for that? Did we all work well? Was this approach that we used, was it a good idea? Can we change anything? And then you'll go around and you'll probably change some things or see if everybody is working well. Staff appraisals, they're normally conducted yearly, but I believe that the more often these take place, the better the process, the better the guidance you can have for your team. You've got a better understanding of how things should actually be working. So quarterly, so every 3 monthly appraisals are more effective for an organization. They will take a lot more time. It'll probably be a lot more paperwork, but it really will help. By having more often appraisals a lot often, they'll give you a better rate of productivity. You know that your employees are actually going to work on their targets all year round. So if you know I've had an appraisal, my appraisal coming up in, for example, you could say in December. So I know that I got set some targets last December. I'll just think, oh, it's okay, I don't need to do anything. I'll just wait until about September, October time, and then I'll start working on them. So you're really ignoring most of those targets for the full year. But if you're doing this every couple of months, you know that, oh, I should really carry on and get on with this. I should be, working towards meeting my targets, so you're not rushing it, and it's a constant flow of work being done. So we do have a purpose of appraisals, and that is to give and receive feedback. So you're not only giving feedback to your team, but you're actually receiving it. So you're going to find out what they think of you and how well they think you're leading them, or what changes you can do. So when you're having regular appraisal systems, you're going to be setting standards. You can have formal and informal discussions. So you can either sit down, set an hour aside in your office and say, right, we're going to talk about this, or you can just have a quick 5-minute chat, at each of the desks. So it can be formal or informal. You can make observations, so you're constantly looking. You're not having to go there and, actually speak to someone. You can just assess their work. So this isn't just you standing over them, watching them work. It can be you're looking at their targets, you're looking at their productivity, you're just noticing how they work in general, what the best environment for them is. And then you can also have 360-degree feedback. So when I say this, I mean you're getting feedback from your employee, you're getting feedback from any customers or any people that they deal with, you're getting feedback from other managers, and you're getting feedback from other co-workers. So you talk to a lot of people and you find out a lot of information from a whole range of people that are around it. So we looked at some of the best practices for staff appraisals here, and we'll make our way on to 2.5 if you're okay with the information. So we looked at appraisals. We've looked briefly at grievance issues when we were talking about the human resources department. Now we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So when we talk about disciplinary and grievance, so explain the importance of disciplinary and grievance procedures, we always think about there's some sort of conflict within the organization, or there's a workplace conflict, there's some sort of discord that is happening, there's an opposition of needs, of your values, of your interests, there's people that are working together, maybe they're not getting along. There's always going to be some type of clash, regardless of how big or small the organization is. There's going to be an issue between authority, between power, between individuals, and between groups. So conflicts can often happen because of a weakness within the organization. This can be the character flaw of an employee. It can be poorly communicated directions, lack of resources, erroneous assumptions, and then maybe even the way things are handled. So how your processes and procedures are handled. So a lot of things can contribute to conflict. So when we think about grievances, these normally occur because of these following reasons. So poor communication, unhealthy competition, task interdependence. So if we're both working together, we've both been set a set task that we need to do. You'll come in on time every single day. You'll do your task. You'll get on with it. I'll roll up about an hour and a half late or 30 minutes late. I'll sit down and spend another 30 minutes just relaxing and faffing about, turning my computer on. And then by that time, you finish your task. You can't go on to your next part because I'm faffing about, because I'm not doing my things. So your tasks relate on mine. So we've got a task interdependence. So you're working, but I'm not doing my perceived job. So that can cause grievances. Lack of planning, poor staff selection. So maybe you've not got the right workers working for you. Got differences in personalities, and things like frustration, stress, burnout. All of these things can work towards it. So we do have a lot of companies have grievance procedures, and obviously there's slight differences between them. But in general, when you have a grievance procedure, you need to make sure it's fair and consistent. A good grievance procedure will save the employer's time, and it will reduce the risk of any employee disputes. It helps to fulfill legal obligations. So you're able to provide staff with written procedures before dismissal, so you're not having to face any libels or any court unnecessarily. You can actually provide your employers an opportunity to manage disputes. So it really helps employers have these in place, so they can try and manage the disputes internally or directly with staff. It can help to stop issues escalating. When the time comes, courts and tribunals will need to step in, and they'll have to be influenced when they're making a decision about a dispute. So these things that are set in place will actually help to make sure that you can try and avoid getting to there. So it's good practice for these companies to have set procedures that they can follow and they know what to do exactly. And that, having set procedures will actually help everybody do the same thing as well. So this little image that we've got here is just a basic image that's saying how something might happen. So you'll receive a phone call and you'll realize that there's a grievance, or you'll have somebody physically walk up to you and say, I have this problem. You'll evaluate it, you'll investigate it. So you're going to act to resolve it locally. So if you say yes, you're going to look at developing the resolution with the complainant. So you might go and implement, if the complainant is happy, if the person that has made the grievance is happy to do this, you'll work with them and you'll find a solution. If they're not, you're going to have to go onto an appeal, and then you're going to have to monitor it. So if you're not going to manage it locally within the organisation, you'll go into the no section, you'll reject the complaint, and you'll refer it to the appropriate channel, maybe like ACAS. And then you'll get feedback, and you'll try and improve any issues in the future. And then we come on to ACAS, so we talked about them previously. So ACAS will actually take formal action in like serious cases. So they'll try and sort out any disciplinary action where it's not been able to be resolved within the company. So they've got a code of practice on disciplinary and grievance procedures, and it's applicable to any disciplinary matters. ACAS isn't the law, but they actually help when you've got tribunals, and they'll actually help you to decide if you've acted reasonably or not. So they'll work with organisations and pinpoint any areas that you might not have followed the rules. If you don't follow it, it can result in the adjustment of, so what that means is you probably have to pay compensation to your employee. So you should always bear that in mind and try to work with your employee before it gets into a dismissal claim or gets passed on to more serious modes. So in total, today, we've covered a few learning outcomes. We looked at people management. We looked at the main roles within people management, so motivation, retention, training, how you can work towards your goals. We looked at human resources and the key responsibilities of them. We looked at legislation, so things like the tribunals and the Employment Act and the Equality Act. We looked at the ways to do the appraisals and what the best way is. And then we briefly looked at disciplinary and grievance procedures. So this is the learning outcomes that we've done today. Do you have any questions, or is there something you'd like me to go over?
No, I don't have.
Okay, so we've done that here. So like I was saying, everything is on here now, so you can, I emailed you the session recording yesterday. Let me just stop recording.